are now within 100 miles. Obviously, An-Najaf is 90 miles south of Baghdad, and they continue to roll forward. However, there were intense firefights today. Some of them involved troops as they were leaving towns like Nasiriyah, which is also further south, and that is just about where that Euphrates River word is there. You can see that area is where Nasiriyah is. We can tell you that a supply convoy there, essentially, according to Central Command, took a wrong turn as it was following up the forces moving forward. And at that point, it was sabotaged, overcome by Iraqi forces that were in civilian clothes. Now, these are the soldiers that the U.S. Army says are missing, 12 of them. They appeared on Iraqi television earlier today. A number of them seen dead. At least the pictures show that there were bodies in the a morgue there. Gruesome pictures. We've chosen at this time not to run the video. We can tell you that there are also POWs, prisoners of war, that are seen being interrogated, asked numerous questions in that video. Troubling for the Pentagon, and they continue to say that the Iraqis need to abide by the Geneva Convention, which says that you cannot humiliate and photograph prisoners of war. So this, plus a number of wounded and fatalities that they are not adding up as of yet, as the troops continue to see resistance as they get closer to those 6 Republican Guard units in and around Baghdad that are entrenched. So the breaking news here comes on a day, obviously, when the Pentagon was looking for something good. It was a tough day. However, it has not stopped the mission, according to Central Command. We heard from Lieutenant General John Abizaid, the deputy to General Tommy Franks down in Qatar today, who said they are not deterred. The breaking news, though, again, that senior defense officials can confirm the coalition has come upon a chemical weapons facility and is now in control of that facility. We don't know what kind of chemicals were being produced there, but it is the first sign of chemical weapons being found inside Iraq tonight. Linda?
Brett, General Tommy Franks had in fact mentioned that yesterday in a briefing, and he was pretty clear. There was an Arab reporter who had said, you know, basically, are you just trumping up this idea of weapons of mass destruction as an excuse to invade Iraq? And he made it very clear that the United States, and specifically the Pentagon, was certain there were weapons of mass destruction. In a way, this makes it a little bit easier for General Tommy Franks.
Sure, and they've been asked questions about this repeatedly. We saw General Franks the first day he came to the cameras. Essentially, that was one of the major questions that reporters down there at Camp Asaliya in Qatar continued to ask: where are the weapons of mass destruction? We heard it today, asked again and again. At first, of course, Pentagon officials said that there were a number of efforts to find them, lists of weapons of mass destruction sites that different special operations troops and a new unit called the 75th Exploitation Task Force was hunting for, essentially weapons of mass destruction across the country. Today, for the first time, Pentagon officials say they found one.
We should explain a little bit about these exploitation task force that we have. In addition to specifically train U.S. military, and at least some of these teams, we've also been able to get our hands on former weapons inspectors for the United Nations to help us sort of hunt, identify, et cetera, correct?
That's exactly right. The 75th Exploitation Task Force is made up of Army chem bio specialists as well as DoD civilian specialists and scientists and special operations forces. Now, this whole team goes around with a mobile lab to try to test, once the area is secured, first of all, with the coalition forces that roll through, secure the area. Then this task force goes in and tests whatever is found at these different facilities. The mobile lab is used to test the chemicals or biological toxins there on the spot. They also have reporters and photographers embedded with those teams to obviously get that information out to the world. today, you can imagine the Jerusalem Post, which is a well-respected paper in Israel, there was some skepticism about perhaps the motivation behind a reporter from the Jerusalem Post writing about chemical weapons and biological weapons inside Iraq. This is, of course, a chemical weapons facility. So there was some skepticism here when the first embed report came out. We were told by the Pentagon, listen, trust the embeds. They are the eyes and ears on the ground. So I've been pressing all day to try to get a Pentagon official to confirm this, and late tonight we can confirm that this has indeed happened and that coalition forces are surrounding this facility.
All right, Brett, thanks very much. We're going to get back to you at the bottom of the hour. If you get a moment to speak to some of your Pentagon sources, see if you can find out whether or not the Iraqi general who was taken there at the complex is being cooperative and is answering any questions about what kind of chemicals, et cetera, et cetera.
Will do.
All right, thanks very much. Brett Baer, live at the Pentagon. I want to take it now to Amman, Jordan. Simon Marks, our reporter there, has also been observing what's being said or not being said among the media there about this find now of a chemical weapons factory near Najaf. Simon?
Well, Linda, it's definitely what's not being said in Baghdad at this hour. This news has broken in the middle of the night in the Iraqi capital. I think we can safely assume that the Iraqi government leadership is sheltering in basements and tunnels beneath the city because Baghdad has come in for significant aerial bombardment over the last several hours. So there has been no official response to this report that a chemical weapons facility has indeed been found. But I can pretty much tell you that I know what the Iraqi government's response to this claim will be. Having dealt with the Ministry of Information in Baghdad for the past several weeks, I can confidently predict that they will dismiss this report. They will say that any chemical weapons that have been found were planted by the Americans. They will, as Brett hinted there, I think, also point to the source of this report, the Jerusalem Post, and they will say that this is nothing more than a conspiracy between the United States and its Zionist supporters in Israel to try and embarrass the Iraqi government. Iraq has been, over the past several hours, celebrating what Brett referred to there as this tough day for the United States. On Iraqi television, we've seen images clearly designed to boost the morale within the country. We also saw, for the first time today, pictures of Qusay Hussein, one of Saddam Hussein's two sons, and also pictures of Saddam Hussein as well. Absolutely no indication, of course, whether these are fresh pictures or old ones, but nonetheless clearly designed to try and communicate to the Iraqi people that the leadership of Iraq is alive, is functioning, and is still in control. All of this coming as Baghdad came under significant attack again tonight. B-52s are in the air. We assume they are heading to the Iraqi capital, and it's possible that the aerial bombardment will continue into daylight hours. Meantime, the Iraqis are, to some extent, preaching to the choir. Demonstrations all over the Arab world are growing. Here in Amman, Jordan today, demonstrations were broken up by riot police using tear gas and water cannon. Those demonstrators putting increasing pressure on the government here in Amman, which wants to preserve friendly relationships with the United States, but is also now under pressure from those demonstrators who say that the United States is pursuing an imperialist war of aggression. Those demonstrations took place even before the Al Jazeera television network published those harrowing images purportedly showing dead American Marines and captured American POWs. Those images have been played again and again and again, not only on Al Jazeera television, but on several other Arab television networks, Abu Dhabi Television, the Lebanese Broadcasting Corporation. They have been repeating and retransmitting those images into homes all over the Middle East. And I suspect that when we gauge reaction to those images tomorrow, we will find that in this part of the world, they have only served to embolden the views of those people who are quite happy to see Iraq giving the United States a run for its money, poking the United States publicly in the eye. Though many Americans will not like that at all, in this part of the world, those images go down pretty well. Reporting live from Amman, Jordan, Simon Marks, Fox News. Linda, back to you in New York.
Simon, you are absolutely correct. In fact, I was just checking a little bit earlier with our translator who we have here at the Fox News channel, constantly monitoring some of the Arab television networks like Al Jazeera and Abu Dhabi TV. And in fact, he said that there is a sense of elation on these networks that basically a ragtag military like the Iraqi military is able to sort of poke the American military in the eye it gives a lot of Americans a sense of real heartburn to hear that that's how it's being treated in the media, at least some of the media in the Arab world. But in fact, you're right. A question for you. Our translator who's been monitoring Iraqi TV is also saying that as Iraqi TV is broadcasting the pictures of the American POWs, that the commentators are saying that the Iraqi government is insisting it will treat the prisoners according to the Geneva Convention, even as they're broadcasting this, which is a violation of the Geneva Convention. Is that what you're picking up from Iraqi media as well?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a great deal of debate about the Geneva Convention over the course of the next 24 to 36 hours because, and again, Americans don't like this, but in this part of the world, people accuse the United States of breaking the Geneva Convention, particularly with its treatment of those Afghan terror suspects being held at Guantanamo Bay. And these images, in a sense, only play into the argument that many people in this part of the world use. They say the United States is pursuing a double standard as far as Iraq is concerned, holding Iraq to account to comply with UN Security Council resolutions, but failing to call Israel to account to comply with Security Council resolutions that affect the government in Tel Aviv. So this debate about the Geneva Convention, I think, will roll on. The Iraqis, of course, publicly will maintain that they are respecting the Geneva Convention, even as the government back in Washington says demonstrably that they are not. Linda?
Simon Marks, live in Jordan. Simon, thank you very much. I want to take it back to our breaking news. Brett Baer, our Pentagon correspondent, has just broken this, that coalition troops have found a huge chemical weapons factory near the Iraqi city of An-Najaf, which is about 90 miles south of Baghdad. Fox is the first to report this in the United States. It's also being picked up by Israeli media as well. Apparently, these are troops from the 3rd Infantry Division who have taken the plant, that they have taken the general and the troops who were guarding the plant. One would assume that they've already begun to question them now. We want to ask one of our military analysts who's standing by with us some questions about this, Major General Burton Moore. General, thanks for being here. One would assume the first thing is we want to know what kind of chemicals they are there and what kind of a danger it is. In theory, the Iraqi general and his troops who are guarding it, this general is going to know what's inside, no?
You would think so. You would think he would know. And I think what's also important about this is the United States has said all along, we know they have these facilities. I think in part they have not shared all of this information with the UN Security Council because of our own security reasons and our own effort to continue to be able to make first contact with these facilities ourselves. I think we're now seeing just the first of many that we'll find during the war, and then I think also after the war is over.
You know, our reporters before you had said that, you know, in the Arab world, and particularly the Iraqi media, that they're going to say, oh, this is trumped up, the United States is making this up. So in theory, our troops, if not Third ID, then maybe the Exploitation Task Force, wouldn't they be under orders to photograph this extensively? I mean, take everything so that they, you know, the U.S. administration can show this to the world and say, here's the evidence, and facts cannot be argued with.
I agree with you, and I think that's part of the reason why we now have these exploitation task forces that are roaming around. We know we've had some special operations forces, and I think part of the plan, actually, where they did not become a threat to us, would be to go in and take these sites without too much combat action. It's not that we want to go in and we don't want to go in and destroy them with air power, for example, because in doing so, one, we could lose the evidence, but two, we're not sure when you unleash these in the air what the impact is going to be in the surrounding areas. So the more of these we can take, the way these elements of the 3rd Infantry have done in a very professional way, the better off we're going to be.
All right, I want to take it back to the other major story, which is the capture of several American soldiers. We now understand from, of course, we're talking about the folks who were taken earlier today in fighting in Nasiriyah. We understand from their home base, which is Fort Bliss, Texas, that's near El Paso, that the families of those who've been captured and killed in action are in seclusion, and understandably so.
Yes, indeed.
And our hearts go out to those families. Question about what we're doing to try to find out exactly where these POWs are. I would imagine that there is a pretty intense effort going on right now to locate exactly where they are. A source of mine who's been in contact with folks in signal intelligence at Fort Meade says that apparently, as of, say, late this afternoon, the chatter that they were picking up did not indicate that the POWs had been moved from the Nasiriyah area, that they were at least somewhere in the vicinity. What do we have that would be listening in? I mean, somebody told me that, for example, we have the EC-130 Compass Call, and I believe we have a picture of that aircraft. That we have operators who are basically on board this aircraft and others like the Rivet Joint trying to listen to the frequencies on which the Iraqi troops communicate, correct?
That is correct. Both of these aircraft have teams in what we call the back end, you know, behind the cockpit. They have very sophisticated equipment. Of course, now we also have overhead equipment, but overhead equipment only goes by every so often, whereas Rivet Joint, Compass Call are in the area and can be focusing strictly on this this area out around Nasiriyah to see, and I agree with you, I think it is unlikely that they would have moved them the 150 miles into Baghdad so quickly, although I think that would be an ultimate plan to do that to help ensure they could hold on to these prisoners. It might be difficult with our forces as well.
All right, let me, now that we have that footage of the EC-130 Compass Call, let's show that. So this is it. This would be flying around the area. It wouldn't necessarily have to be right over the city, for instance. It can be a little bit further away. And they can, in theory...
In fact,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Linda.
No,
in fact, it would not be overhead. It is a C-130 aircraft. It is a cargo aircraft primarily. It is slow-moving. It's fairly vulnerable to ground fire. But it also has, through the electronic gear, the capability to stand off, which it would stand off out of harm's way, and it could listen and focus on the area in question.
Now, in theory, we would have special forces already somewhere near the area. Who would be tasked? Say we find them. Say we can locate where they are, we have a reasonable degree of certainty, and we have the opportunity. Who would be tasked to get them out?
Well, General Franks would make that decision in Central Command, but we have numerous very, very qualified Special Forces units. We have Navy SEALs, we have the Rangers, we have the Delta Force that all have that kind of capability. The British has SAS Special Forces teams that are in country, as well as some other operatives that we have in country that may also be Iraqi nationals, or at least be able to blend into the Iraqi countryside, which would all help. However, I think it is important to remember that while these efforts are ongoing, we have to be careful that this effort does not stymie the overwhelming effort, which is to rid Iraq of Saddam and his regime, which would ultimately secure release of this prisoners maybe in a faster time than we could if we're out doing it with Special Forces. I don't mean to take anything away from these teams. They could do it, but you got to find out where they are. You got to find out how they're being guarded, and you got to put together a special plan to go in and do it, and it would have to blend very well with the other military operations that are going on.
General, I want to go through some of the overall progress so people get a sense of how our forces are moving, and I know you have the screenwriter there. Some of our military experts have explained to me that we have the 3rd Infantry Division closing in on something called the Karbala Gap. That is a key element in our progress toward Baghdad. Can you take us through what you have on the screenwriter?
Sure, if we'll go to the screenwriter.
There we go.
We can talk about it. First, and before we do that, just to pinpoint this An-Najif area where the chemical facilities, if you look at the point of that arrow right there, that is just about An-Najif. It's about 90 miles south of Baghdad, so you can see that our 100-mile circle is just about like that. So troops are both in the 100-mile arc. So they're within 90 miles of Baghdad. We know that just because they've had this operation at An-Najif. You can see the Karbala, and let me clear this off to help a little bit. Karbala itself is about 60, 70 miles outside of Baghdad. And you see in this dark area right here, which I'll color red, that is a major lake. It's a Razaza Lake, they call it. It has a dam just to the east of it there. Let me go ahead and clear that off. You see the Euphrates River that runs up that way just on the eastern side of Karbala, and this all kind of merges into a fairly narrow, flat area that we are calling right now the Karbala Pass. We fully expect that some combat will take place in that area. I'll put 2 tanks there and clear them off. We would expect the Hammurabi Republican Guard Division and the Nebuchadnezzar Division to be there, and this is the division that the 3rd Infantry Division is closing on, making very good progress, and we would expect them to be able to close probably very quickly. How quickly they do close will depend in great measure on how well that battlefield is prepared and when that commander in the field says, it's time to go, we're ready to go get them.
Got it. If you can, I want to take you back to a question about our Americans who are being held by the Iraqis. Once again, we're getting word that the home base at Fort Bliss, Texas, is taking the families into seclusion, and we can certainly understand why. One military expert explained to me tonight that one of the concerns here is that it appears they were taken not by a regular Iraqi army unit, but by an irregular unit. And the concern being that within the regular army there is some sort of code of conduct and how you handle prisoners. When you're talking about the irregulars, those are the, you know, if you will, the lunatic fringe, and how they may treat our Americans may not give us much room for optimism. What do you think?
Well, I think your assessment is correct generally. However, with the experiences we've seen with Saddam, his regime, his leadership, and how they have treated people, how they treated our POWs in the '91 war, I'm not so sure that they're being any more mistreated than they would by a regular Army or a Republican Guard unit. The one thing that is also tells me about this is it's further evidence that the leadership has been severed from communication with the people down the line. Normally there would be somebody else there to tell that militia group to go easy, and I'd be more concerned that in this instance that there is no leadership there that could say, wait a minute, we got beat up pretty bad in '91. When this war is over, we're not going to be the winners, so let's make sure that we don't do anything foolish here that will jeopardize our future. So these are some things that we need to think about. Who knows what's going on in their heads? I mean, it is a tyrannical bunch. They're a ruthless bunch, as we've seen by these photos. They're reprehensible, they're repugnant, and God forbid if these families see them, I know it would be just very, very tearful for them and very sad, and no professional soldier should have to endure that kind of treatment.
Major General Burton Moore, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Once again, taking you back to the latest breaking news. This is that coalition forces, we have confirmed, and our Brett Baer is the first to break this story here in the American media, that coalition forces have discovered a huge chemical weapons factory near the Iraqi city of An-Najaf. That's about 90 miles south of Baghdad. This is where the 3rd Infantry Division was locked in a huge firefight this morning. Once again, a huge chemical factory. There were Iraqi troops that were guarding this facility. They have been taken by American troops now. I want to take you to Fox's James Rosen. He's live at the White House. James, I know that this story is just breaking. Has there been any reaction yet from the White House?
No, good evening, Linda. We don't have reaction on the discovery of this chemical weapons facility from the White House. However, Fox News does have reaction from the Bush administration on this videotape showing apparently a broadcast on Iraqi television originally and then Al Jazeera showing U.S. prisoners of war apparently having been interrogated, beaten, tortured, and executed. A senior administration official would not say whether President Bush himself has reviewed this tape, but this official did tell Fox News that Al Jazeera is part of an internal video feed system at the White House, and that White House officials have indeed reviewed the tape. And according to this senior administration official, and I quote now, they are outraged. This is further evidence of a cruel, brutal, and inhumane regime that must be ended. The official added anyone responsible for any atrocities will be treated as a war criminal and dealt with accordingly, end quote. As for President Bush himself, he returned to the White House shortly after 1 p.m. Eastern Time today, following a morning at Camp David spent praying and receiving constant briefings on the status of the war effort from the Pentagon and National Security Council. Upon his return, the president held a rare and extensive question and answer session with reporters on the South Lawn, the commander-in-chief expressing satisfaction that coalition troops have secured control of Iraq's southern oil fields and not been exposed to chemical or biological weapons attacks. And the commander-in-chief offered this top-to-bottom rundown of the war effort in various parts of Iraq.
Most of the South is now in coalition hands. Obviously, there's pockets of resistance in a place like Basra. We're making great progress. In the West, we're making great progress. The areas, the launch sites for the Scuds, well, certainly not 100% secure, but we made good progress. And so I can assure the American people we're making good progress, and also can assure them that this is just the beginning of a tough fight.
The president spoke to reporters shortly after 1 p.m. Eastern Time. When he spoke, he said that he had been briefed this morning at least twice on the status of those American prisoners of war. But Mr. Bush apparently had not seen this grisly videotape to which we've been referring. Still, nonetheless, the president said that such tactics present an interesting contrast between those images on the one hand and on the other, the images of Iraqi soldiers surrendering, in the president's words, happily, gleefully to U.S. forces. And to the folks holding U.S. prisoners of war, Mr. Bush issued this stern warning.
The POWs I expect to be treated humanely. And just like we're treating the prisoners that we have captured humanely. If not, the people who mistreat the prisoners will be treated as war criminals.
Finally, the administration continues to work the phones on the diplomatic front today. Secretary of State Colin Powell placed calls from his home to his counterparts in Egypt and Saudi Arabia. Reporting live from the White House, James Rosen, Fox News. Linda?
James, thanks very much. I mean, sorry to hit you with a question you're not prepared for, but as we're waiting to hear back from the administration on this discovery of a chemical weapons factory, in theory, this would be a real victory for President Bush, because he's taken a lot of hits from foreign government leaders and also from foreign media, saying that that it's been a stretch, basically, that he's been trying to link Iraq with weapons of mass destruction, and as Iraq has continued to protest that doesn't have any anymore. This, in theory, once they get a chance to determine just how extensive it is, what's being produced, et cetera, this could be something that helps the Bush administration quite a bit in the war of public opinion.
No doubt about it, Linda. This could be, if what Bret Baier is reporting is accurate, and it looks like it is going to be accurate, that this chemical weapons facility, a huge one, has been discovered by coalition forces. This would be, in Washington parlance, a smoking gun. However, from the administration's point of view, it does not need to prove this anymore. From the administration's point of view, Secretary of State Colin Powell went to the United Nations with what the administration thought was pretty convincing evidence of chemical weapons, biological weapons, and weapons of mass destruction being produced by the Iraqi regime. He held up a vial at one point, as you saw, and also played some intercepts of Iraqi communications showing efforts to hide the production or evidence of production of chemical weapons, biological weapons, etc. So from the administration's point, no doubt about it, this is a victory of sorts, but it's not one they probably feel they have to prove. They probably feel that they have proved this point already when Secretary of State Powell went to the United Nations. Linda?
James Rosen, live at the White House. James, thank you very much. All right, we want to go back to Fox News military analyst General Burton Moore just for a moment, as we're talking about this breaking news once again, that apparently U.S. troops they've discovered and taken a huge chemical weapons factory near the Iraqi city of An-Najaf. Just to give you a sense of where that is, it's about 90 miles south of Baghdad. This is where the 3rd Infantry Division was locked in a pretty serious firefight earlier this morning. And what we understand is that this facility, although we don't know yet what was being produced inside, we know it was absolutely camouflaged. It was camouflaged in such a way that it wouldn't be able to be photographed by American airplanes who've been flying over. It was covered in sand-cast walls to make it look like the desert. But the good news is that they have already taken the Iraqi forces that were guarding the facility. They've got a general there and some 30 Iraqi troops who are also there. And in theory, if the general at least is cooperative, we may get some information about what was being produced inside, and this may be something that may be a significant step forward for the Pentagon as they try to identify weapons of mass destruction that are hidden around the country of Iraq. We'll keep you posted on that, but taking you back to General Burton Moore.